And welcome back, Rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and this is, yes, week 8 of the 2026 MLR season's power rankings. We are near the end of what has been, even though a shorter season, less teams involved, it has been exciting rugby, and we are getting ready for what I feel is going to be an exciting finish. One team has already clinched one of 4 playoff spots. And I'll spoil it for you if you haven't been watching, but it really isn't any spoiler. Chicago, who has remained undefeated so far this season, but the other 3 spots, 2 of them for sure probably seem pretty wrapped up, but it's that last playoff spot where literally all 3 teams, yes, all 3 remaining teams are still fighting for that last 4th place spot. And like I said, it will probably come down to the final week of rugby action to see who will join in the playoffs, which rolls around in the middle of June. June 21st is when we have the big MLR championship game in SeatGeek Stadium, which again is looking very much like we might see Chicago playing in the championship game at home. But still, plenty of rugby left to go. Again, if you haven't watched my power ranking videos before, this is based purely on what goes on the pitch, who you play against, where you play them at, because we know home pitch is a thing. It is not based on the standings, even though they will look pretty similar, because that's just the way that it goes. But let's start. We're going to start at the bottom, and again, a team that has been kind of, been there for a while now. Started off really hot and then just kind of lost steam. Anthem Rugby Carolina, who fell to Seattle. Now, is Seattle back? We'll see, but it's hard to say because Anthem has looked a lot more like Anthem of last year than what the Anthem team that started kind of hot going 2-1 to begin the season. Let's go with that game. So in that game, Seattle scores immediately after 3 minutes, but Anthem kind of made the game a little competitive first, scoring off of a maul and score. Campbell Robb, the hooker for Anthem, has been phenomenal. One of the bright spots of the season so far. He gets his 5th of the season, but unfortunately, yellow cards have been going on like crazy. Again, Anthem gets a yellow card, which Seattle immediately capitalizes on, and then the floodgates open. 9 total tries for Seattle. They were looking like Chicago. Anthem was able to get a try, one from Connor Mooneyham. This was his first try since week 1 when he got a hat trick in that to kind of spark Anthem, but just like Anthem hasn't really been doing much, neither has Connor Mooneyham, but it's good to see him get a try. In the end, Anthem Rugby 21, Seattle 57. Got a shout out to the returning David Kutzer, who came back 6 or 7 off the tee, 12 points. And surprisingly, even though he's been missing the last 3 weeks of action, he regains his number 1 spot with the most points scored this season at 64 points. But yeah, it was all Seattle in this game. Again, is Seattle back? I don't know, because Anthem definitely doesn't look like they have come back after the hot start. Seattle is number 2 on the rankings, and they stay at number 2, because again, number 1, no surprise, is Chicago. They looked like they're struggling a little bit with Legion. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But Seattle, that win over Anthem doesn't move them enough to overplace a team that has literally been perfect this entire season. Now, a very more interesting game, the red, white, and blue game between big rivals Old Glory DC and New England. Will New England start to surge, the reigning 3-time MLR champions, like the 2-time MLR champions Seattle has been doing so far this season? We'll see. Old Glory started the match with a try by Ross Seppersmith, but then New England struck back with a try by Oscar Lennon, who's been a gem for New England. Then a great try by Ben Lesage, who I haven't really been talking about so much, but he has always been a great talent for New England, a Canadian national capped player. Old Glory, though, gets a penalty try to tie up the match. Joel Hodgson, who has been phenomenal for New England, gets a penalty kick to give New England the small lead, 17-14 at the half. Very, very competitive game. Starting the second half, Joe Hodgson gets a couple of penalty kicks to increase the lead, but Old Glory strikes back with a try by a beautiful kick pass by Jason Robertson, who has been a star for Old Glory, right into the hands of Damien Hoyland, that scores a try to give Old Glory the lead. Hodgson gets a penalty kick to regain the lead. Jason Robertson had the opportunity to put the game away with a penalty kick. It bounces off the uprights, but a couple moments later, New England unfortunately gives another penalty away for Old Glory, and Old Glory, Jason Robertson kicks the winning tee, 24-23. New Old Glory beats New England. So New England still near the bottom of the rankings, but Old Glory with a really, really strong win for them. Joe Hodgson 5 for 5 off the tee, 13 points total. With that win, New England, who was 4 in my prior rankings, drops down a spot to number 5, while Old Glory moves back up to number 4. And then our last game between, at the time in the standings, the number 1 and number 2 team, Chicago and the San Diego Legion. This was actually a very, very competitive game. And, again, I don't know what this says about Chicago. Granted, Chicago did travel to Sacramento, to San Jose to play against the Legion. So a little bit of travel. They looked like they were a little bit jet lagged, but Legion always tends to play some teams very, very strong. At the beginning of the game, Brock Webster, after a little bit of back and forth, scores. Again, Brock Webster, a really great Canadian player that has been very talented for Chicago. Legion, though, strikes back after a couple of penalties by Chicago by Gonzalo Bertrano, who has been always amazing for the Legion. He scores to take a lead. Do got to shout out to Tomas Caceres from the Hounds. He looked like he suffered a pretty bad injury. No word on exactly his status, but he had to be taken off with a cart in this match. The Hounds, though, were able to strike back with a try by Ali Devoto, but the Legion taking advantage. Again, a lot of penalties by Chicago in this game, surprisingly. Stephen Crimp was able to get a offload to Joe Mono, who was able to score his 43rd in his career, 4th of the season. And that allowed the Legion to get the lead 19-12 at the half. And the second half, though, Chicago was striking to try to get close to the try zone, but we don't talk a lot about the Legion's defense. Legion's offense has been probably second best to Chicago, but the Legion's defense stopped Chicago not just once, but twice at the try line. But unfortunately, though, Chicago's still able to get a try by Mason Fleisch, as well as a couple penalty kicks from Chris Helsenbeck that pretty much put the game a little bit away from the Legion. Legion did get a try by Fredapulu, though when it was being challenged, it looked like it might have been a knock-on. There wasn't enough clear evidence because there was a player in front of Fredapulu to prove that the try did not happen. So Legion did get a try to get within 3, but unfortunately a last-minute try by Chicago allows Chicago to walk away with a very close win, 36-26. This was the second lowest score by Chicago and the second highest amount of points by a team against Chicago. So Chicago barely holding on to the old mate, and a very strong performance by Legion, but just not enough to take away the perfect record from Chicago. So the Legion, even though they lost, and Old Glory barely beat the Free Jacks, I didn't feel Old Glory had enough to jump 2 spots. I didn't feel it was right for Legion to go back a spot. So they stay number 1. And of course, Chicago, with the old mate, still sitting at number 1. But this does set up for a very, very interesting match between Chicago and Seattle that will be happening this weekend. As I said before, with the way that the schedule works out, Chicago finishes the season. Seattle match is their last game in SeatGeek Stadium for the regular season, and then they're on the road against Old Glory and New England. Again, Chicago, with the win over San Diego, secured a playoff spot. They haven't secured the number 1 spot just yet. If they beat Seattle, that will secure, or if they tie with Seattle, that will secure them a home field advantage throughout the playoff season. Possibly now going into the Major League Rugby Championship game, because that will be at SeatGeek Stadium as well. So, again, because they've already secured home field advantage throughout the playoffs, I mean, by the time they go against Old Glory New England, and those are both road games, will they still be playing at 100%, or will they allow some of their players to rest because they still have quite a bit of a journey before they get that championship match at SeatGeek Stadium? And at that point, Old Glory New England may still be fighting for a playoff spot, so they might want it more near the end. So, as I mentioned before, it's going to be very interesting to see. I don't think Chicago will end the season undefeated. Not like they have to, because again, it will be impressive to be the first team to ever finish the Major League Rugby season, regular season, undefeated. But what means more, undefeated for bragging rights or an actual shield? So again, I feel match against Seattle, who, yes, they looked very good against Anthem, 9 tries against Anthem, but Anthem hasn't been looking very good since the start of the season. Are Seattle surging? Seattle, if they win against Chicago, they secure themselves a playoff spot. So they definitely want to win. Again, road games against Old Glory New England to end the season. Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be very, very tough for Chicago. I would be very impressed if they end the season undefeated. But again, we'll talk more about this upcoming weekend slate coming up next. And now let's preview all the matches in Week 9 of the 2026 MLR season. We just have, including this one, 3 more weeks of the regular season. Like I said, every match, it's going to be important in determining the rest of the playoff position and the 3 teams that are going to be fighting for that coveted 4th playoff spot. So let's start first. Saturday, May 23rd, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. By the way, that is a time change. Originally, this game was going to be an early start at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. 1 p.m. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It has been pushed back. So 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Time. By the way, all these matches you can see on ESPN Plus. Of course, for Sunday Night Rugby, ESPN2. On live or on demand, so don't miss that. So, Free Jacks, your reigning defending three-time MLR champions who are looking like they may miss the playoffs this season, taking on Anthem Rugby Carolina, who, again, started off the season great and now has been struggling. It's interesting. These teams are kind of playing off as pairs and where they are in the standings. You have the 2 teams that are at the bottom, 2 teams that are at the top, and the first and second place team, and then your 2 teams in the middle. So it's interesting how this season has played out so far. But again, 2 teams that are struggling to make their way into that 4th place playoff. They are both on the outside looking in. Neither team will be eliminated if they lose, but losing this game pretty much leaves you one step closer to not making the playoffs. So very, very important game for this one. All these games are rematches from week number 5. In week number 5, Anthem Rugby Carolina lost to New England 38-26. Anthem has not beaten New England in 5 attempts. This game again is going to be at American Memorial Stadium. Anthem has not been looking very good. New England, interestingly enough, I don't know what the roster is yet for New England, but we have yet to see any of the returning players that we've been told have re-signed. Paula Balacana, Andrew Quatrain. Eventually, you would think these 2 very important pieces would make their way in. And again, they need them as quickly as possible because New England cannot afford to lose this game. Both teams need to win this game desperately. Then we move on to our traditional doubleheader on Sunday, May 24th. 1 p.m. Pacific Time, the really big game. First place taking on the new second place, the two-time MLR champions, the Seattle Seawolves, taking on the undefeated Chicago Hounds. This one is looking exciting. Again, is Seattle back? We'll see. But it's interesting to say that if Seattle wins this game, they have secured themselves a playoff spot, which is phenomenal considering, Seattle has to win and Old Glory has to lose. So Seattle has to win with 5 points. They need a bonus point, and Old Glory needs to lose in order for Seattle to secure themselves a playoff spot, which again is phenomenal considering Seattle started the season 1-2. So Seattle doing kind of like what Seattle does. They have been notorious for having slow starts, and they are creeping their way up into the playoffs. Chicago, of course, the only team so far that has secured a playoff spot as I mentioned in the first half of the video, if they win this match, if they tie with Seattle, they have secured themselves first place and home pitch advantage throughout the playoffs. Possibly they will have the home pitch advantage in the Major League Rugby Championship game as well. Interestingly enough, Seattle has beaten Chicago 4 times. Chicago has never beaten Seattle until earlier this season when they won 59-22 in Starfire Stadium, which is no easy feat. Will Seattle be able to beat Chicago in SeatGeek Stadium? Again, Chicago looked like they're struggling quite a bit with the Legion. Again, Legion, very tough team. It was on the West Coast. Chicago had to travel. This is home. West Coast team Seattle has to travel to the Midwest. It looks like it would favor Chicago, but like I said, after this, on the road with Old Glory, on the road with New England, 2 teams that may be desperately trying to find a playoff spot, while Chicago might have, especially after this game, sealed themselves home pitch advantage throughout the playoffs. They may feel like, why even worry about it? Don't worry. So we'll see where the old mate ends up going. And it'll be, like I said, it'll be interesting if Chicago loses to Old Glory New England and they don't make the playoffs. That old mate is out of contention, and they'll be done for the regular season until next season. So some interesting storylines to follow in this one. And then, of course, our Sunday night rugby game, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, California Legion hosting Old Glory. This will be at Heart Health Park, which is in Sacramento, home to the Sacramento Republic Football Club. It is a soccer stadium, seats about 11,600. It was also the site of the recent Pacific 4 Series matches between USA Women's against Canada. Against New Zealand. That match was completely rained out. It was horrible weather conditions. Hopefully it will be better conditions for this match. This again is a rematch. Technically, these 2 teams have only played once because the Legion are a brand new franchise. They played in week 5. Legion won 36-21, but it was a close game. Old Glory looked like they had the momentum to win, but a couple of well-placed interceptions by the Legion were able to win it. That was at Old Glory Stadium of their new college stadium that they're playing at. This is going to be, again, in Sacramento. So, again, East Coast team flying all the way to the West. That proves to be quite a challenge for whatever team is traveling. Again, neither team will secure themselves a playoff spot just yet. Seattle definitely going to be looking to see if Old Glory can lose if Seattle beats Chicago. So, Seattle rooting for their West Coast rivals. Again, neither team are in trouble of technically losing out on the playoffs if they lose. But if either team wins, they haven't secured a spot just yet, but they will obviously be one step closer to securing possibly the number 2 spot in the playoffs and a crucial home pitch advantage. So that is, of course, our review. Again, don't forget, watch these games on ESPN Plus or ESPN2. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for your support. Again, Monday is Memorial Day, so thank you very much for all those who have served, and appreciate your support, your service to our country. And without you guys, none of this would be possible. So again, thank you very much for your services. For those who have lost people, I've lost a couple of family members in the war as well, so we know the emotions that go through that. It is a very, very important holiday. So have yourselves a wonderful Memorial Day. Enjoy the rugby, and I'll see you on the pitch.